These keys must be held and wielded by a man or men to accomplish the gathering of Israel and the return of the 10 tribes. Now, we have discussed this particular topic previously, so we will give only a brief sketch of this facet of our scenario. The Lord informed Joseph Smith that a man like Moses will be raised up to lead the Latter-day Saints out of bondage by power. In fact, there must be 2 men, a modern-day Moses and Aaron. 2 men were called, Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery. They were designated as the first and second elders of the church. In these offices, Joseph and Oliver were to act as Moses and Aaron, respectively. It was as Joseph acting as Moses and Oliver acting as Aaron that they received the pertinent keys from the first Moses. Due to apostasy, Oliver Cowdery was replaced by Hiram Smith, Joseph's brother, as the second elder and as the second Aaron. Joseph and Hiram were subsequently martyred in Carthage jail, removing the second Moses and second Aaron from the earth, along with the keys to the redemption of Zion. As we pointed out earlier, a second Moses and a second Aaron are still required. There must be a first elder and a second elder of the church. These positions must be restored and filled. Additionally, for the first and second elders to have the power necessary to redeem Zion, they must have the keys that Moses restored to Joseph and Oliver. Since Joseph and Oliver are dead, this necessitates Moses, the last man still alive to hold the keys, to restore them to a new Moses and Aaron. We do not know who these 2 men will be. To our knowledge, they have not been called or ordained or given the keys. We believe it will be likely that these 2 men will be related. Moses and Aaron, as is well known, were brothers. We also know that the first 2 sets of first and second elders of this dispensation were related. Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery were cousins. Joseph and Hiram, of course, were brothers like Moses and Aaron. For the future first and second elders to be fully empowered to fulfill their mission, the gathering and redemption of Israel by power, there will need to be a series of angelic ministrations. We have already mentioned that it will be necessary for Moses to return and again restore the keys of the gathering and the return. It is more than likely that Elias and Elijah reappear to restore their keys as well. After all, the first and second elders are acting as the president and assistant president of the church. They will need the same keys that Joseph and Oliver were given to govern the church and kingdom. They will likewise need to be ordained as first and second elders of the church and as apostles. This was the authority and calling of Joseph and Oliver. Joseph and Oliver were the first to receive the Melchizedek priesthood under the hands of Peter, James, and John, becoming the first and second elders chronologically and, at the same time, hierarchically. As promised, the three ancient apostles ordained and confirmed Joseph and Oliver as apostles. This necessitates the return of Peter, James, and John to ordain the two brethren as first and second elders and as apostles. Joseph Smith received visitations from numerous angelic beings. This will likely be the case with the future first elder. John's account of the onset and progression of the calamities and the gathering is couched in symbolic and sequential magic. It is, in effect, a magic spell, like unto Jesus writing in the sand or the hand of God writing on King Belshazzar's wall. A magical spell is any sequence of words, spoken or unspoken, to gain a magical effect. The events of the apocalypse have already been magically invoked and must occur in the designated sequence. It will be the first and second elders of the church who, like the original Moses and Aaron, must use magic to initiate the events described in Revelation. They will use the rod of Aaron and their priesthood keys to invoke or command the return of the planets and their inhabitants, and later, the destructions and miracles, as Moses and Aaron did in the first Exodus. After they receive the keys, they will need the magical tools to perform their mission, the Davidic Regalia. The Regalia were last seen in the cave of Cumorah, the Lord's sacred treasury, under the care of the sacred treasurer Moroni. The Regalia includes the sword of Laban, the rod of Aaron, the breastplate with Urim and Thummim, the Liahona, and the sacred records of the kingdom of God on earth. Each piece of the Regalia, as we documented at length, possesses unique magical and miraculous properties. This will require another angelic visitation. Moroni will need to appear to the two elders to show them to the location of the treasury and give them access to the Regalia. Now, we know that Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery possessed and used some of the Regalia. Joseph used the breastplate and Urim and Thummim to translate, in part, the Book of Mormon. Oliver had the rod of Aaron and was given the opportunity to use it for the translation of ancient records. In preparing the text of this revelation for publication, Sidney Rigdon replaced sprout and thing of nature to rod. This was no ordinary divining rod, for it was made by God. Sprout and thing of nature were euphemisms for Aaron's rod to disguise its presence to the world. We know that many pieces of the Regalia were shown to the three witnesses, including the breastplate, Urim and Thummim, the Liahona, and the sword of Laban. The possession of the Regalia will also legitimize these elders as the proper authorities in the kingdom of God on earth. When it comes time for Moroni to inform the two elders of the location of the sacred treasury, he will likely not lead them there. Instead, he will show the first elder, or both, the location in vision with sufficient detail for them to know or recognize where the Regalia are to be found. This is how he dealt with Joseph and the box with the gold plates. We should not assume that the Regalia are still deposited in the Hill Cumorah or one of its departments, as Orson Pratt referred to it. The Grand Repository is under the charge of angels for their safekeeping. The cave or room was a tremendous size, 16 feet square, as William Phelps related, with a door to walk through. Something this size should be easy to locate. Certainly, attempts have been made since the presence of gold plates became public. Before, during, and after Joseph Smith's visitation to procure the plates, people have dug and searched in vain. The question, then, is why has such a tremendous treasury room not been found? Of course, the Lord could have removed the treasure, thereby securing its safety, but left the empty room. The inability to find any evidence of a treasure room, treasure trove, or any evidence that Joseph Smith had removed gold plates from the Hill Cumorah was not from a lack of trying. Furthermore, those who would discredit Joseph Smith used the lack of evidence to debunk his claims. Claims of supernatural powers only add fuel to the fire. However, all these things can be resolved if we discard our modern scientific and materialistic assumptions and our predisposition against the supernatural. After all, the gospel of Jesus Christ is founded upon the supernatural, and the scriptures provide numerous examples of events and abilities that are denied by modern science. They are called miracles. There is a simple explanation for these issues, albeit a supernatural one. The truth of the matter is that treasure, whether in a stone box, a chest, or even a large room, can move according to the will and command of the being in whose charge the treasure is. This should come as no surprise to those who have followed our extensive dive into consciousness, the light of Christ, with its ability to act upon matter as a result of mental intent. There are reliable sources who have asserted that treasure moves away from those who seek it, apparently of its own accord. Joshua Stafford, a fellow treasure digger with Joseph Smith, related that Joseph Smith had told him that he was unable to obtain a box of money because it moved away. One of the Book of Mormon witnesses, Martin Harris, reported a similar incident when he and two others went to the Hill Cumorah after Joseph had found the plates to hunt for more gold. They found a stone box and dug around it, but as soon as they tried to bring it up, the box sunk deep into the earth. At a special state conference in 1877, President Brigham Young related a story told to him by Orrin Porter Rockwell. According to Rockwell, a chest that he and others dug around and attempted to open sunk into the back, making a rumbling sound as it moved. Brigham then informed the assembled audience that he knew of other such stories. According to President Young, these things are only marvelous to those who do not understand them. Lucy Mack Smith, Joseph Smith's mother, related a similar story pertaining directly to her son and the gold plates. When Joseph Smith returned to the hill to retrieve the plates to start the translation in September of 1824, his first attempt was met with disappointment. Contrary to the commandment, he laid the plates down, thinking there were more in the box. But when he turned around, the plates had miraculously disappeared. Having lost the plates, Joseph prayed to the Lord for an explanation. The angel reappeared and explained that Joseph had laid the plates down contrary to the commandment. He had been overcome by the powers of darkness. As he tried once again to take the plates again, he was violently hurled backwards. The angel was gone, as was his chance to recover the plates. It is clear from Lucy Mack Smith's account that the Lord is very jealous of his treasure, in this case, the gold plates. He will not tolerate the slightest disobedience or misstep. This will likely be true of the future two elders as they retrieve the Regalia. They will be given strict commandments concerning their care and use and will be expected to follow them to the letter. As the caretaker of the Lord's treasury, Moroni will enforce the Lord's commandments pertaining to its contents as he did with Joseph Smith. The reason for these strict commands and rigid enforcement, of course, is the fact that the adversary will exert every effort to thwart the successful completion of the mission of the two elders. Lastly, it is clear from all four accounts that treasure, especially sacred treasure, can be safeguarded through its miraculous movement out of the reach of those who wrongfully seek it. Furthermore, any evidence surrounding the treasure can disappear as easily as the treasure itself. This would explain the futile searches for any physical evidence surrounding Joseph Smith's claims of the golden plates. President Brigham Young, in the same state conference previously mentioned, explained to the saints present that the Lord has put a seal upon the treasures of the earth, effectively not allowing men to get them. He recited the example of the slippery treasures of the Nephites, which were hidden for the sake of security and then simply vanished. The Book of Mormon reference comes from the Book of Helaman. Samuel, from the wall of the city of Zarahemla, informed the Nephites that their riches would become cursed due to their iniquity. Their tools, swords, and other riches would slip away from them so that they could not find them. Brigham Young continued by teaching that treasure, including mineral deposits, are being watched by the Lord under the supervision of angels. The treasures can be moved from one place on earth to another as easily as man can walk. This principle is critical to understanding the treasure cave of Cumorah. If the Lord and his angels can move treasure, whether mineral deposits or artifacts, such as the gold plates, anywhere on the globe at will, then we can draw the following conclusions. First, the treasure room found by Joseph Smith at the hill is not intrinsic to the hill. That is, it was not constructed or created there. Instead, it was moved there in order to give Joseph access. Second, the treasure room was moved from the hill after their purposes had been accomplished. Third, the treasure room will be or has been moved to the location necessary for easy access of the future two elders. President Young's statement also shed some light on the question of Book of Mormon geography. Though the hill where Joseph found the plates and the treasure room is called Cumorah, and has been since 1829, the church has no official position on its identity. Joseph, at least in his historical account, never named the hill. On the other hand, his mother claimed that Joseph did call the hill of Cumorah. Whatever the case, in the end it does not really matter if the hill is not the Cumorah of the Book of Mormon. Then the plates and regalia were moved there by the angel Moroni, who had charge. He did not need a wagon to do so. If the hill was the original Cumorah, then of course the treasure room need not have been moved. But this does not identify the hill's original position. Like the treasure room or any treasure, the hill itself could have just as easily been moved. As we know from the example of the brother of Jared and Mount Zerin, mountains can be and have been moved simply by commanding them to do so. That the two elders will receive access to the regalia, especially the rod of Aaron, does not mean they will know when, how, and under what circumstances to use any of these objects. They are magical, as we have previously demonstrated, and the two elders, especially in our modern scientific world, won't necessarily intuitively know what to do. In fact, Moses had to be taught how to use the rod before appearing before Pharaoh. The Lord instructed him on how to turn the rod into a serpent and back into a rod again. For each of the plagues, the Lord first instructed Moses when to use the rod and what the effect would be. Later, when the Israelites were pinned against the Red Sea by Pharaoh's army, Moses had to be told to lift the rod over the sea to divide it, so that the children of Israel could cross. Moses did not know that this was possible. When the Israelites complained to Moses about the lack of water, Moses in turn complained to the Lord. The Lord told Moses to take the rod and strike the rock of Horeb. And when he had done so, water would and did come out. Again, Moses had not thought of using the rod for this purpose. Whenever Moses used the rod for miraculous purposes, he first had to receive instruction from the Lord. Both Lehi and Nephi, after receiving the Liahona, also had to learn its uses and how to make it work. To begin with, the Lord told Lehi to look for writing on the ball. Nephi observed that the pointers in the ball only worked according to the faith and diligence and heed given it. But he learned this only after using the ball. It did not come with instructions. This pattern of ignorance and not understanding the workings of these magical instruments continued into our dispensation. When Oliver Cowdery was given the rod of Aaron and told he could use it to translate ancient records, he failed in his efforts. The Lord informed the second elder and the second Aaron that he failed due to the fact he didn't understand how the rod worked and how the translation process was supposed to operate. For the future first and second elders, instruction and guidance will also be necessary. They will need to know how and when to use the rod and for what purpose. As with the miracles of the Exodus, timing will be important for the future miracles to be performed by the first and second elders. As we will document in future videos, the sign of the Son of Man will appear above earth at a designated time. This means that the command to the planets must also occur at designated time. Like the Lord telling Moses when to raise the rod for each plague and miracle, the Lord also will have to tell the first elder when to raise the rod, when to command the planets, and when to perform the other miracles of the second coming.